Hi class, this is Haley and this is my report on what I thought about chapter 2 with sensation and perception, and pretty much going through all of our senses and how we use them all, everything that goes behind them, and kind of what I found interesting and things that I related to in my own life. So the first one, I really liked how the conclusion pretty much said that all of our senses connect to one another, that it starts with energy, goes to a receptor, then goes to a neural impulse, which is then sent to our brain. And basically how all of them relate to that, they all follow the same simple process. They just do it in their own ways, as you know, everything is made up of their own little parts, but it's still the same process overall. And how eventually everything else in our cognitive function kind of affects that, like our memory, our attention, which is a thing that when we are looking at sight and we're talking about the way that like the shapes connect and such, and when you're looking at things from a different point of view, how that can really affect you, because you're having to take a memory of something, flip it upside down, flip it a different way to kind of get the answer that you're looking for. The other thing that I really saw about sight was the blind spot, which is something that we talk about a lot. I had trouble doing the exercise in the book, but I looked up some more just on Google, found some little exercises to kind of test my blind spots and see, you know, how far, how, you know, close it could get. I also found the breakdown of the rods versus the cones in our eyes to be very interesting, and how each does, you know, pretty much a different thing. You know, one works in the light or the daytime, one works in the dark or the nighttime, and how even though, you know, you have so many of one and so few of the other, and so they tend to do the same job equally to still get us around with all the different conditions. The other one was talking about the different farsightedness, and I don't know if I say it wrong, I apologize. The Prez one, the farsighted, how that comes with age, and that's not, and that from the hardening of our lenses, not just necessarily a genetically inherited farsightedness. The other one I really had an interest in was the myopia, which was the nearsighted, that it said affected a lot of college students. That's actually something that I've thought in my life I suffer from a lot, especially as I've gotten older. It's something I actually talked about with my husband this weekend. We were driving back a couple hours down the interstate, and we were talking about the differences in reading signs at a certain distance, how he's very good at seeing things far off in the distance, whereas I feel like I have to be much closer up on a sign to do it. Hence why even when I'm driving around in an area that I'm mostly common with, I tend to use a GPS, because it's really hard for me to read up ahead and see what a street sign says and make sure I'm going the right way until I'm almost like right on top of it. The next one after that was when we hear and how everything works. I thought it was really cool how we just have these 3 tiny bones in our ears that really do control a lot. It's those vibrations next to each other that mean everything, especially when you're talking about the otosclerosis, which is where the doctor had to go in and scrape away at them so that you can hear things. I just thought that was kind of an interesting technique. The other one was about hearing and how you can orient your head into different directions because of our ears using the ITD and the IIT to kind of locate where sound is in relation. And that's something that when I was growing up, we went hunting a lot in the woods, and that was something that was very common because you can't make a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot going on all around you. So that was something that we did a lot to kind of find out where something came from, the direction, or how we would find each other out in the woods, basically. The next one after that was kind of combining hearing and seeing, was the McGurk effect, about how when we solely see something or when we solely hear something versus when we hear them together, the different effects that that has on our body, and how when you combine the senses like that, our brain kind of goofs up and tries to figure it all out. And I thought it was interesting to see how our senses work really well individually and how they wind up trying to work together. Next after that was the combination of smell and taste, and our taste being affected by our smell, like when we have a cold and stuff, or when we were talking about the different types of taste, the umami that came up. I didn't know what that was, so I was interested to learn that that's pretty much like being able to smell proteins and stuff, which to me is kind of like one of those survival instincts. I found that interesting. Something I didn't know. I didn't know if other people knew that too, possibly. And the other one that I wanted to look more into because I felt like it didn't answer in the book was on page 43. It talked about people's bitter taste perception can have health consequences later on in life. And I know it mentioned briefly on the page before about it's because poison has a bitter taste to it, but so do some other food groups. So I was wondering what type of health consequences could come of that. The last one I wanted to go on was touch, our last sense we haven't gotten to. And that one I found interesting when I was reading about the 2-point touch test. When I was reading about that and then trying to perform it on my husband, it made me think of this other game that we used to play back in elementary school. And we were talking, and it was talking in the book about how different parts of us have different perceptions, or we can tell different things. I don't know if you fellow classmates ever played it, but back in school we used to walk our fingers up and down each other's arms, and it was a game to see who could get closest to finding out when you were right in the crook of your elbow or how far away you would be up the arm or down the arm. So that was just a little bit of real life experience that I connected with it too. Other than that, that is my reading and analysis of chapter 2. It had a lot of information in it, but it's good to kind of get the behind the scenes look about everything that's going on, so that way as the rest of the book goes more in depth, I can kind of look back at my notes and find out how everything works with another. And I'm really interested to see how the different cognitive processes can kind of interfere with what our inner biology, I guess, is saying. So thanks.